Good evening, everyone. My name is Stacy Varghese, and I'm Director of Leadership Giving and Engagement at St. John's University. Our guest today is the remarkable Maral Javadifar, whom I'm very excited about. Maral just completed her second season with Super Bowl champions, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, as assistant strength and conditioning coach. Raised in Queens, Maral attended the Mary Lewis Academy and received a full athletic scholarship to play college basketball, then went on to obtain her doctorate in physical therapy. Interviewing her is New York's lead sportscaster and play-by-play announcer for St. John's University, Ralph Bednarczyk. Ralph, take it away.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, first of all, for joining us on this St. John's Alumni Professional Development Series. Next week, by the way, we'll have a networking resume writing part 1 of Building Your Resume, February 2nd. And someone that has spent a lifetime in building her resume joined us here, Maral Javadifar. Maral, first of all, thank you so much for being here. Congratulations on your Super Bowl win. So you just finished your second year as the Tampa Bay Bucs assistant strength and conditioning coach. Super Bowl was won on February the 7th. So what has life been like, first of all, since that day? What has your life been like since that?
We've been extremely excited, and I'm extremely proud of our guys for, winning and everything that led up to the point of the Super Bowl. It took me a few days after winning to realize that we actually won, and it was a real thing, and it wasn't a dream. Extreme excitement. The organization is very happy and proud, as you can imagine. So thanks again for having me. I'm happy to be here. Thanks.
We're happy to have you. And we're joined by a lot of different kinds of people in and around the New York area, not just New York. St. John's graduates with various medical backgrounds and future medical backgrounds and interest, current students, and just alumni that are just big Johnny sports fans, just interested in your story. So we'll cover a lot of different things, just from a fan perspective and also from a professional development standpoint too. So Maral, so you grew up in Flushing, you attended the Mary Lewis Academy, and that's where things started. So, but at the Super Bowl, first tell us, what was that like during the game? What is your role like during the game? All the hype that goes into that over those 2 weeks. But describe what those 3 hours were like, and I guess before and afterwards.
Yeah. So the biggest part that we play as the strength and conditioning staff beforehand is preparation. Preparation is critical in all aspects of life in all different settings. And, leading up to it, we weren't just preparing 2 weeks before the Super Bowl started. It was from day one during training camp. And so it was a seamless process, and we're continuing to kind of mesh the pieces and puzzle pieces together. Once we won the NFC Championship, it was thinking about how we were going to get the guys most prepared and ready for Sunday, the Super Bowl. So it was looking at recovery and sleep, their training programs and what they were doing at practice and the loads throughout the process. That's the most important thing, is making sure the guys feel ready and actually are ready, using objective data to kind of piece all of these things together. Before the biggest role that I play before a game is preparing these guys and activating them and getting them ready for game time. And so that starts 6 hours before kickoff. And once we get to that point, for us as coaches, we're staying calm, collected, and cool, and making sure we're building up the central nervous system slowly but surely for the big hype, because you don't want to just go up and then crash. And I thought we did a really good job of that as a coaching staff, and having the guys feel prepared and not fatigue or crash at the end of the game.
So we'll talk about your upbringing and your life and the future for you and how you got there. So a little bit more on Maral's background. So prior to taking the position with the Buccaneers, You worked as a physical therapist in Seattle after completing your sports physical therapy residency at VCU in August 2019. And while you were there, you were also a guest lecturer also at George Mason University too. But going further back, you played basketball at the Mary Lewis Academy in Jamaica, very close to St. John's, and you have a couple of big St. John's connections that are basketball related. You were recruited to Pace by a former St. John's women's basketball star, Katrina Blow, who is all over their record books, who was also there on staff. And then your Mary Lewis Academy teammate just 1 year ahead of you, nicknamed Buzz, Amanda Burakovsky, who played 3 years at St. John's with women's basketball too. You went on to Division II Pace, and you were originally an accounting major, which is, I think, a bit of a trivia for you. And you were able to get that despite tearing your ACL your senior year. Describe how that event, tearing an ACL, and kind of the subsequent rehab off of that, pretty much has shaped where you've gone to where you are today.
So, I mean, I remember this like it was yesterday. I was at one of the last AU tournaments in September, right before the start of my senior high school basketball career. And, I went for a layup and tore my ACL. And I thought, it was one of the biggest losses that I had experienced at that time. And I had a couple of choices. I either let myself go and give up on my dream of playing college basketball and being afforded an opportunity to receive a scholarship, because otherwise paying for school was going to be extremely hard for my family to do. Or I persevere and use my ACL injury and what I thought was one of the biggest losses of my life and try to use it to elevate me. And God bless his soul, rest in peace, Joe Lewinger, who was the head basketball coach at Mary Lewis and later athletic director at Mary Lewis, recently passed because of COVID in March of 2021. He said it best, and he always explained the story to people. He's like, and he would remind me often, he would say, you used your experience to take yourself to the next level and afforded yourself the opportunity to excel and fight through the pain and the heartache in order to get that college scholarship and then use it to your advantage. And once I got to Pace, I thought that accounting was what I wanted to do. And so my first semester, I was prepping and planning to do accounting. I'm taking these economics courses, and I'm going to be sitting behind a desk and, crunching numbers. And that just wasn't for me. But I was also intimidated by the biology degree and having to get a doctorate while playing college basketball and all of the things that were involved with that. And, some people told me that it wasn't a good idea. And then I was like, in my head, I knew that I wanted to help people who were in a similar shoe that I was, to play at that elite level, or the most elite level that they were able to play. And I took that with anyone. So what I mean by that is when I got my physical therapy degree from New York Medical College, I started at an outpatient clinic because I wanted to get my hands on an array of the population. So from, 10 years old to 70 years old. And it was because I wanted to experience all different types of people and not pigeonhole myself to the 1% of the population who are elite athletes or athletes in general. And so that was important for me. And I think it was a big part of adding to my resume and building the repetition and the continuing education to separate myself with not just my PT degree, but the other, different therapies that I learned in conjunction with it, which is long story short. But I think the biggest thing that I learned from my ACL injury, to bring it back full circle, is even if you think it's the end of the road, there's always a different path that you can take to get there to where you want to get to.
And you took the fastest path. I mean, like no New York traffic to get there. So as I saw, you had torn your ACL in October of your senior year. Sometime I couldn't find, let's say mid-October, right before high school basketball season. You thought that you weren't going to get a chance to play, and Joe Luinger says, we have to get you back for senior day. So
Yeah.
sometime, I suppose, in March of, I think, let's say it's 2008, March of '08, you actually you were able to rehab off a torn ACL to some degree, a full tear or partial, 5 months, and at least get into the game senior night, and I guess get a layup and prepare yourself. I imagine that's probably a story you love to tell because not many people are even willing to dare to come back, for 1 minute off of a 5 month ACL rehab.
Yeah, so that's so funny. You're bringing back good memories from back in my playing days. But yeah, we were playing Malloy High School, and um, uh, I only dared to step on that court mostly because I knew I was protected from both sides. I had teammates on Malloy who I played AU basketball with, and I also had my own teammates who were going to protect the hell out of me and make sure that I wasn't going to get injured. But yeah, I remember I had a goal, and even though it was a short-term goal and I wasn't going to try to score as many points or play defense, I remember that feeling of being on that court with the rest of my seniors at that time, and Joe Luinger introducing me. I felt like him and I were still in it together. He still allowed me to be a team captain and be just as much as part of the team as everyone else. But it was. I want to say it was like 4 months actually after my ACL tear, and it was in 2008. You're right. Wow, that's crazy.
4 months. That means basically, I mean, your T-shirts that you give out to the players rehabbing should really say no excuses. So a 4 month ACL tear, and you got back into a high school basketball game. So I got to say the Bucks players have no excuses at this point, huh?
Yeah.
So once you go through George Mason, and of course VCU, you move on to Seattle. Describe the process, how the NFL got in your radar. Was that ever a goal? When did it strike you that this is something that can happen for me?
So to be honest, the one of the biggest and most valuable lessons that I got early on in high school was to build connections and build relationships. And I had been encouraged by other mentors to send out emails, call people, introduce yourself, go learn and continue to learn. And so from my early days, I guess I was a senior going into my first year of college. I started reaching out to Sue Falsone, who is one of the first athletic training, first person in the, she was an athletic trainer for the LA Dodgers at the time, and she was one of the first women to do so. And so for me, it was an opportunity to email her, and I was like, I don't think she's going to respond. She must be really busy, but I somehow got her email through the good old internet, and I emailed her and she responded. And so every semester in college, I would email her just to check in, let her know what my thoughts were, what my plans were, and she would respond. I would ask her questions regarding rehab and strength and conditioning and all of that. So I started, putting in pieces throughout my, or not building pieces throughout my, early on from high school, and that went from college to PT school, and even during my internships. And I always wanted to be a strength coach, but I wasn't sure if that opportunity would ever come to fruition, because it's hard to get into sports. It's a real thing. I stayed watching NBA, the NFL, and hoping that one day I would be able to help those athletes. And I was never confident that it was going to happen, but I knew I was going to put myself in those situations to try. And so I say that to say this, when building those connections, and every city that I went to intern at, I would try to meet different professionals, whether it was athletic trainers, strength and conditioning coach for different universities and colleges, and different professional teams as well. And in doing that, my name came through the pipelines for this position that I'm in currently. I got my name was given to the head strength and conditioning coach with the Buccaneers, Anthony Paroli, through an MBA physical therapist and strength and conditioning coach, and also through my connections. I used to work out. I guess this is important to note. While I was in high school at the Mary Lewis Academy and at Pace University, I would train in the summers with the football team at CW Post. And so in doing that, those relationships led to where I'm at currently. Did I know that it was going to happen? No. Did I give up on it? Absolutely not. I knew I wanted to be in sports. I knew I wanted to be in the NFL or the NBA, and I didn't know which one would happen, because in the sport world, it's so versatile and so dynamic and volatile, and it could change at any moment. And so the right opportunity came, and I took advantage of it.
Tell us about, so you get to the interview process, so your name gets passed along. So yeah, Anthony Paroli was the head strength and conditioning coach at the time. Just describe your interview and perhaps any little things you might have done. I'm sure he had multiple applicants, even for an unposted job, like the NFL. Probably generally is, and I'm sure he had 1,000 applicants if it got posted anywhere. What were the little things you think, looking back on it, that you were able to communicate and maybe get across, that you think maybe separated you a little bit to have this opportunity that you used as a separating tool?
Yeah, so he's still the strength and conditioning coach there, and him and I are working alongside each other every single day, and I've learned so much from him throughout this process. And I think one of the biggest things he talks about too is the fact that I had a physical therapy degree. I had a performance mindset and a physical therapy background that other applicants did not have. And again, and I want to tell everyone this who's listening, just because I'm sharing my path with you, and let's say you want to do the same thing, it doesn't mean that my path will get you this result. And remember, you need to fail and get back on the path, and our experience is going to be different than, or my experience is going to be different than your experience. And it's not to say that I had the perfect path or the right answer. But with that being said, my physical therapy background set me apart from my counterparts and other people.
And Maral, my sense is, as an outsider, that yes, strength and conditioning, it sounds like it's like your typical kinesiology degree, perhaps, is the undergrad. How many strength and conditioning coaches and people also have the PT degree? How rare is that? How unique is that?
So in the NFL, it's rare. I believe there's 2 or 3 others. But where I started to see and start to develop, not that I didn't come up with it. I can't take credit for many of the things that I do, but the whole rehab to performance, a lot of people talk about going through the rehab process to the performance side. And it's a very dynamic, I think they're interrelated, and there shouldn't be one entity for each, and it should be a seamless process so that the communication is as smooth as possible for athletes. Because the worst thing that you can do, and communication is key, the worst thing that you can do is have to explain the same story or the same experience from one practitioner or one person to another. And so with that being said, the physical therapy, I believe there's 2 or 3, but the NBA and I believe MLB have a lot more. In the NBA, it's very common for the strength coach to have a physical therapy background. So it's not new. But in the NFL, there's 2 to 3, I believe.
Mm-hmm. So you go through your interview with the head strength and conditioning coach, Anthony Paroli, and then at some point, I imagine you probably have to interview or meet Bruce Arians, who's known as a very cerebral guy. You know, he is among the older coaches in the NFL. He really worked his way up. He was a longtime coordinator, so I think his perspective is much different than most. Describe what that interview was like with Bruce Arians, and what does an NFL head coach maybe look for? You know, do they have certain strength and conditioning philosophies nowadays that might vary from one guy to the next?
Sure. So I think it all stems from uh, his relationship with Anthony Paroli, and Anthony Paroli and him worked together while Anthony was with the Cardinals back in 2016, I believe. I may be messing up the dates, but they had a very good working relationship then. And when a BA got brought on to Tampa last year, he brought Anthony with him, and Anthony and I had spoken, and he was doing his vetting process, and I finally got to Tampa. And when I got to Tampa, I met with BA in his office, and one of his first few questions was, "Tell me a little bit about yourself." And I'm like, "Wow, how do I? You want to get your point across in 30 seconds or less, and not go around the circle and make sure it's the right information to share and all of those, critical things." And that was the first. There's no preparation for what Bruce Arians was going to ask of me. So one of the first things, very calm, cool, and collected man that's sitting in front of me, and he's asking me, tell me about yourself. And uh, I'll never forget that day and that process. But I shared with him a little bit about what I shared with you guys thus far, and then thereafter I met with our general manager, Jason Light, and then they kind of both were like, the job is yours if you want to take it.
I'm sure you remember this day. I guess it would have been, I suppose, July of 2020. So, what was your first interaction with Tom Brady like?
He got to know everyone in the facility. We were introduced to MJ, Tom, like I didn't know who he was, but awesome guy, very professional, and just watching him do his thing at the most elite level, and the consistency of someone who is the greatest of all time, to watch him in and out was a privilege for me and an honor.
And let me follow that up, because everybody hears about his regimen, his personal camp that does his regimen. What do you see that he does behind the scenes that you see that makes and keeps him elite?
It's a process that he's worked at for years and years, him and his team, and there's a science and art to it that they have figured out. And with Alex and Tom, and we're just so grateful to be around them and learning from them and learning from each other and just talking. And so you're not gonna something's working so well, you want to step back, as a colleague, and step back and watch and observe and learn from those opportunities.
Another guy that was in a different situation, Rob Gronkowski, sits out all of last year, perhaps burnout, perhaps his body needed some time off. So you and Mr. Paroli must have had a special project. Kind of describe maybe the journey it was when you first got Gronk into camp to get him into some form of being close to where he was physically after a year off in the NFL.
Yeah, it's a process that we are very excited about, and how we do things at Tampa, especially in the performance side of stuff. Every player that comes through, we're analyzing individual movements and looking at different ways of individualizing their training program to best fit them. So it's not a one-size-fits-all protocol or a one-size-fits-all training program. And we do this for everyone, Gronk, the rest of all of our guys. And so it was looking at him, what has worked for him in the past, what hasn't, and then using our science and our data and our objectives to create this master plan, if you want to call it that, that best fit Gronk, for example, or any other of our any other player. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that we individualize our training programs to so that the guys are able to do what they need to do best on the field. That's the most important thing, is how do we get you guys to do what you do best on the field on Sundays? And that's what we prepare for.
And Maral, is there a guy, let's say from this past season, that you're particularly have incredible professional pride over? You are on the both performance and rehab side, so you see it from both lenses. Who's a guy that you're particularly just proud of how far they came, because you saw the work that had to be done behind the scenes. We only saw the work on TV from the outside.
Sure. And I'm not going to answer that individually or a specific player, because it's not just one person that is part of a player's success, and it's a level, and not a level, but there's so many different pieces and people that are part of this process of success for the guys, including themselves. And so it's the communication and the relationships that are built within our facility and our organization that allow our players to be successful on the field.
So while you're in this role, kind of describe maybe, as you look at yourself, professionally, how do you sort of think about growing from this role as a professional that people need to be conscious of, and even someone that is at a high level for yourself? How do you kind of sort of keep yourself in check and make sure that I am still growing?
Sure, and that's a great question, and I think it's important not just to look at, and I'm not just speaking to myself, but anyone in the professional world who's working or is trying to excel at their craft or be better. Knowledge is power, and I've always stayed hungry. I've always stayed hungry for knowledge and learning, and surrounding myself around people that are a lot smarter than me. And I've done that. I've done a pretty good job of that, because there are a few times where I feel like I'm the smartest person in the room. I should say that I never feel like I'm the smartest person in the room. And I think that's a good thing. I really do think that has helped take me to the next level. And especially because the people that I'm around aren't speaking about the same things that I already know. They're talking about different areas that can help me expand where I'm currently at. And the biggest what's awesome about our specific weight room, our strength and conditioning staff, there's experience as far as age. We've got a 2-time gold medalist in track and field and speed and conditioning. We got Anthony Paroli, who has been with the Arizona Cardinals, a head strength and conditioning coach with Mississippi State, another head strength and conditioning coach, and they bring different things to the table, and we're always bouncing ideas off of each other and keeping each other in check, if I'm going to be honest, and questioning each other. And it's a good thing, and it has helped us grow. And outside of that, even outside of my small circle, continuing my relationships, and it's hard to do in season, if I'm going to be honest, but continuing my relationship outside of just strength and conditioning, the PT world, medicine, and what have you, and following leaders who I follow and read about, because I think it's important to be able to lead a group of people in any aspect of your life, and also sit back and take a seat and be the recipient of that knowledge.
I want to be fascinated by some of your knowledge, Maral. as I look at the outside of the strength and conditioning world, and of course what these athletes do, what is just like a mind-blowing metric to you, or just a number, something that you don't even have to say which athlete, but like that you were just blown away by like, oh my gosh, this guy got his body fat down to this, or this guy's shuttle run. Is there just a number that, or a metric that sticks with you to give people on the outside some perspective of how fascinating they are?
Yeah, I mean, so for every practice and games, there's different data or different objective tools that are being used. So during practice, we have guys wear these GPS units that track their speed, their acceleration, their change of direction. And for games, there's a different metric or a different device that's being used. But let's just use speed as one of the easy ones to follow. 22 miles per hour, 22 plus miles per hour is pretty darn fast. And to see, I don't think I've ever seen that in basketball. And so to see that in the NFL, to see day in and day out on the practice field and in a game is pretty remarkable. And when you step outside and see the lay person running, and then you compare, you come back to work and you watch practice, you're like, holy hell, that was pretty impressive. So speed, I would say 22 miles per hour, 22 plus miles per hour. That's pretty damn good.
Yeah, you're lucky to get that on the Cross Bronx Expressway. Right?
That's true.
Right? Holy cow.
Yeah.
And within your upbringing, and speaking of New York, I mean, you probably had to be tougher than perhaps some of the other applicants. So your mom and your family came from Iran, war-torn Iran at that time, and I guess at some point, I'm not sure if she knew if they knew what the NFL was when you said, yeah, you know what, this is my goal. How about kind of the way you had to explain to your family, yeah, I want to go into the NFL. This is kind of my thing, and how did you have to communicate that and let them know that was your, or the NBA or MLB, that became your dream?
Yeah, so when they came from Iran, they had a different perspective of life and what society should be. Okay, so I remember in the third grade, I asked my mom to put me in CYO basketball, and that was my first kind of initiative of, hey, this is what I want to do because all my friends were doing it. That was my only reason. I didn't know that you could play basketball and earn a scholarship, or play AU and whatever comes after that. And so it started then, I would say, in the third or fourth grade, where I was persistent in asking, hey, I want to do this. And I was taller than everyone at the CY level, so I was okay. I was pretty decent. And then I stopped growing eventually. But in the fifth grade, I was asked to play in an AAU tournament, or play on an AAU team. And other parents were telling my mom that this is an opportunity for her to maybe get a college scholarship. And AAU basketball cost a lot of money, money that my parents didn't have at the time. And so there was fundraisers and sacrifices that they had to make personally that afforded me the opportunity to play. And, they always did it with a smile because it made me happy. They wanted to give me an opportunity that they didn't have. But I didn't understand that at the time. And so, and looking back on it now, I'm extremely grateful for them, both my mom and my dad. And so after AAU basketball, AAU started getting more expensive because now you're traveling to different states and there's different requirements and different tournaments that you have to pay more for. And so money was a problem. I mean, a lot of people can attest to that. But they still did it. They figured out a way. And even if it put them in debt or in trouble, they figured out a way in hopes that I would get a college scholarship. And, after I tore my ACL, I think a lot of that loss and that feeling of disappointment came from the possibility of not getting a college scholarship, because who knows how that person is going to be after an injury like that. And so I think a lot of my drive during that injury was to make sure I was still able to get a college scholarship and be afforded the opportunity to play because I wanted to go to school for free so that my parents didn't have to try to figure out a different way. And so I think once those doors start to open and they saw my excitement in sports and how it kind of molded me into who I was or am, built me character. I was very shy growing up, and I became a little bit more confident each time. And a lot of those character builders led me to this point. And so when I talked about the NFL or the NBA or the MLB, they weren't so surprised, but they were very supportive, and they always have been. And I think that has been one of my biggest assets. You know, I had my parents and my brother near me, and pushing me. And if I failed, they would pick me back up, and I'm forever grateful for my family for that.
Mhm. And I think you described something as sort of like Queen's tough. So what is Queen's tough? And especially for our, audience that is probably going to be tri-state based, to Maral, how do you think those should use what we experience and what you experience in Flushing, growing up in Flushing? How should we use it in the professional world? How do you think it's affected you and maybe the attitude you have, because now you've lived in several different states? How has Queen's Tough shaped you, and how do you perhaps use it?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us can agree to this, that we've always found, or we find a way to assimilate. And you don't have to be an immigrant or a minority to do that. But in my case, I had to assimilate to different cultures because of the area that I lived in. Um, and being flexible and versatile and open helped me. And you know, to be tough, what does that mean? There's both inner and outer strength, uh, things that you see and you don't see. I don't have to like bow up and try to fight somebody to get my point across. And I think that's important to say, because then you look like a fraud, right? And I think it's one of the most important things that I've been taught, is to be genuine, be upfront and be honest, but don't take shit from anybody. And I'm sorry if I don't know if I'm supposed to be cursing, but I live in a weight room, so you're gonna have to excuse me. Um,
That's the
but
language of the weight room.
yeah, yeah. And so you surround yourself with people who are fighting the same struggles, and they may not be the same. We all come from different backgrounds and different circles, and we have different experiences that kind of mold us into who we are. And those experiences, although they can be very um, traumatic or um, tough at the time and hard to come out of, they build character and they build who we are. And those experiences take us to that next level, in my opinion, at least.
Two more for you, Maral, before we say goodnight to you. First of all, we have a question from a panelist, and I was going to ask as well. What are your aspirations? Is perhaps being a head coach, working in the front office, overseeing perhaps strength and conditioning, perhaps more so from an office, or creating the plans, being hands-on? Or what do you see? What do you want your future to look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I do have a lot of different avenues I can take because of my background. But when I look back at what I wrote 5 years ago, it was to be director of sports performance, where I was overlooking both the strength and conditioning side and the medicine side and bridging that gap. But and I still want to do that at some point. I'd love to be a head strength and conditioning coach for a team. And I think it depends on the opportunity. I am more hands-on, and so that director of performance title would put me a little bit more hands-offish, but I can sense that I would be more hands-on if I was afforded that opportunity. So I do think it's a dynamic world, and the sports world continues to evolve. And the right opportunity, if it comes, when it comes, I will jump on it. But yeah, I could see myself being overseeing both departments, or being the head of one as well.
This one specifically for young women, that want to go into the sports world, even if it's something besides medicine. What can they do to stand out now that you've been through this process and probably have met many others in similar boats to you?
I think what's critical is to look at the people in the positions that you want to be in, and look and see what certifications or continuing education that they have. And then look to see what their counterparts are doing, and separate yourself by adding to that. So if the base minimum is what, person X, let's say person X is holding a specific position and they have, let's just say, a bachelor's. Maybe you need a master's. Maybe you need a different education or a different education course to kind of add to that. Find value in, or make people find value in what you are going to provide to them. If you, and be confident in that. And so it's the dynamic of setting yourself apart, like you had said earlier, by making yourself valuable to an organization.
You kind of answered this one a little bit, but what's your overall message now to people that perhaps have dreams to work for a high level, or reach a high level in overall medicine, or want to work for Mass General? There's a lot of people that can achieve things on paper, right, with their resumes. But it sounds to me like there's much more than just being so strong on paper. What's your message to those people that want to be able to jump off the page and have who they are jump off the screen, apart from just being a degree?
Yeah, absolutely. And I say this a lot of time to people that I've mentored, and who've mentored me. I've gotten a similar message. But what I think is most important is experience. And because I'm sure there's people on this panel who are heads of positions and or want to be heads of position, and you get a resume, and one is really good. It has, or they could be the same resume and they're filled, they're checking off all the boxes. But you never know what or how that person is gonna present themselves. And to me, it's experiences and relationships and your ability to communicate with others that may afford you that opportunity. And it's hard for me to sit here and say that you will definitely get it, because it's possible that you may check off all those boxes that were deemed critical and important for that role, and not get a job. But I think you need to continue to push forward and find those opportunities, even if it's a step down, in order to get back up. And I've done that. And it was hard to do, and it was hard to make that decision to take a step down or make a lateral move. But those experiences that I took helped me gain more experience for that elite or higher level, higher position.
Maral, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Success to following your dreams, and thanks to our entire audience watching, St. John's fans, all those current students, graduates. Thank you so much as part of the St. John's Alumni Professional Development Series. Next week is a networking part 1, resume writing, building your resume. That will be next week. Look out for the emails and the social media information on that. But on behalf of everybody at St. John's in Queens, and we say goodbye, and thanks from you all the way from Queens. Thank you so much, Maral, for being here tonight.
Thank you so much, Ralph. Thank you, Stacy. Thank you, St. John's.
Thank you, Maral. Good night. Good night, everybody.